Then with that entity, I will reign with blood and horror on this earth.
Depart.
Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name's Marty Braden, and I woke up this morning with an impression that I should share with you what came to my mind regarding who would be the next president and prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in a few days. Before I do, though, I want to set the table for those thoughts by reviewing briefly what has been the pattern of succession for filling the vacancy of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints once the president and prophet passes away. Starting with who was the prophet and president of the church in my early childhood, President David O. McKay, the senior apostle and president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, who were serving at the time when each of the past presidents of the church passed, starting with David O. McKay and continuing up until President Russell M. Nelson became the prophet and the president of the church, and at his passing were as follows. For President David O. McKay, the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles was Joseph Fielding Smith. He was the next in line for the presidency of the church following President David O. McKay's passing. According to the succession pattern of the church, the president of the church has always been the most senior apostle and has served the longest in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles up until the president dies. So, when President McKay passed away in 1970, Joseph Fielding Smith, as I said, was the most senior apostle and the then current president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Therefore, he was the next in line to become president of the church. For President Joseph Fielding Smith, the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles at the time of his passing was Harold B. Lee, and so he was the next in line for the presidency of the church, and therefore he became the president and senior prophet of the church, serving 18 months before he died as president. At the time of President Harold B. Lee's passing, the president of the Quorum of the 12 was Spencer W. Kimball, and so he was the next in line for the presidency of the church. For President Spencer W. Kimball, the president of the Quorum of the 12 at the time of his passing was Ezra Taft Benson. He was the next in line for the presidency of the church in terms of seniority. For President Ezra Taft Benson, the president of the Quorum of the 12 at the time of President Benson's passing was Elder Howard W. Hunter, who became the next president and prophet of the church. He served only 9 months in that calling before his passing. His tenure as president of the church was the shortest length of service that any prophet and president of the church since its founding back in 1830. For President Howard W. Hunter, the president of the Quorum of the 12 at the time of his death was Gordon B. Hinckley. He was the next in line for the presidency of the church. For President Gordon B. Hinckley, the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles at the time of his passing was Thomas S. Monson. And so, President Monson became the next in line for the presidency of the church. For President Thomas S. Monson, the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles at the time of his passing was Russell M. Nelson. He was the next in line for the presidency of the church. And now for President Russell M. Nelson, who has passed recently, the president of the Quorum of the 12 at his recent passing is Elder Dallin H. Oaks. He is the next one in line for fulfilling the vacancy of the office of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This pattern of succession for filling the vacancy of the prophet when the president passes has been the pattern that the apostles of the church have followed ever since my youth and before, well before. So that being said, if the Quorum of the 12 Apostles continue to follow this pattern of succession, which they probably will, Elder Dallin H. Oaks will be our next prophet and president. Now then, with this setting of the table, I am ready to share a few thoughts I had regarding our dear prophets and apostles, especially those senior apostles who are in their 80s and 90s, my goodness, such as Elder Oaks, who is 93, and Elder Eyring, who is also 93. Elder Holland, who is next in line to Elder Oaks, is 84. All three of these brethren have served more than 3 decades as apostles for the church. Elder Holland nearly died during the summer of 2023, the tail end of the pandemic. It was close, but God saved his life and brought him up. And 3 of these incredible servants of the Lord are experiencing the effects of old age, though. During the recent October 2025 General Conference, we could see them struggling physically. Both Elder Holland and Elder Eyring had to stay seated as they gave their addresses to the saints. Elder Oaks, on the other hand, was able to stand and give his talk, but not without signs of shaking a little bit, such that he had to be assisted with getting to and from the pulpit. Who wouldn't at 93 years old have that struggle, right? Anyway, the thought came to me, what if these 14 apostles came to the revelation that Elder Uchtdorf, who is 84 like Elder Holland, but appears to be in much better health than these 3 senior apostles, what if the quorum members were told by the Spirit that there was to be a change in the pattern of succession, and that Elder Uchtdorf was to be called to be the next president and prophet of the church, due to the fact that the 3 most senior apostles are struggling with their age and health? So obviously, wouldn't that be something? Of course, Elder Oaks, no matter how much longer he lives, still has a great deal of wisdom and powerful counsel residing in his heart and mind, and therefore will make a fabulous prophet and president of the church for sure, no matter how much longer he lives. We don't know how much longer any of these dear sweet apostles will live, but even if it was for just a handful of months, it would still be a great blessing to and for the church and its members. Who knows? Maybe he lives another 2 years, and during that time Elder Holland and Elder Eyring both pass away, so that Elder Uchtdorf would succeed President Oaks. Or maybe Elder Oaks serves less than a year, and Elder Holland is still alive a year from now, and therefore he would succeed Elder Oaks. Only the Lord knows how this prophetic succession of presidents and prophets is going to unfold for such a time as this. But with that said, I truly know and believe that every one of the 14 living apostles that are serving right now, as well as the soon to be called next apostle, are the finest men living on this planet, and I'm proud to sustain them to the callings they currently serve in. Who knows, maybe we will be blessed with an African American apostle. If and when that ever happens, I will be one of the first to jump for joy and raise my arm to the square excitedly when it comes time to sustain him as an apostle of the Lord. Anyway, until next time, I wish you continued success. Love you. Bye.